Welcome back to Rate That Album, a back and forth album review between myself, Joe Fremming, and my good friend Paul Muad'Dib. Paul, how you doing?
Hey, Joe. I am doing well. I'm in good spirits today. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right. I'm still kind of. I had a weird reaction to the COVID vaccine.
Oh, you did. Talk to me about
that. Just 2 days after I got it, I just kind of got really sick for two days. Like I got shot on Tuesday, and then Thursday, Friday, it just hit me. So, but it wasn't that bad. I'm just kind of getting through the weeds on that right now.
Mm-hmm. But, would you call it like an equivalent of like when you get kind of sickly from the flu shot? Is it kind of like that?
It's a little more intense.
Mm-hmm.
Some people don't get it. I got it. One of my employees, she told me that she was feeling like that too. So I mean, it was obviously not as bad as actually COVID. It was just a really bad cold for me. So, but I was just foggy brained for a few days. So,
well, I'm glad you're coming through it. I'm glad you got the vaccine.
I am too. I got the Pfizer one. So.
Okay, cool. Yep.
So.
Yep.
Shot number 2 is coming in a couple of weeks, and hey, we're almost through Voldemort, man.
We are almost through.
A little. I guess we don't know the future.
Yeah, we don't know the future, but unless you're in Texas or Florida, then you're kind of fucked. You might as well just make your own country. Like I think that's the plan to succeed from the QAnon. They're just gonna make it like a new leper colony. Like we all have COVID, stay away from us.
Well, good riddance to bad trash, I say.
Right. So, Christ.
So, Paul, in one more hour, we will be gone. Let's discuss this week's album.
Please. Yes, let's do that.
All right. So, I decided we need to get out of the bong fog that is 70s prog rock. We did back-to-back with Pink Floyd and Genesis. So I figured let's do a little bit of second generation Riot Girl, and I picked Sleeter-Kinney's 1997 album, Dig Me Out. Paul, before I kind of go, there's not a huge history, but there's some things I'm going to touch on. What do you know about Sleeter-Kinney?
So I know a little bit. Like I said, I hung out with some Riot Girls after we graduated from high school. I was like their guy on the couch for a while. And as a matter of fact, we all took a road trip to a festival out in Oregon together, and actually ended up stopping and getting pictures taken at the Sleeter-Kinney sign marker. So I know a little bit about them in that regards, but I didn't get a lot of history from those girls in terms of what Sleeter-Kinney was. I just knew of it because they listened to a lot of Bikini Kill, Sleeter-Kinney, Kim Deal and her bands, things of that nature. So yeah, that's all I really know.
Well, Sleeter-Kinney, the members. At least 2 of them were kind of part of that first generation Riot Girl with Bikini Kill. That would be Carrie Brownstein and Corin Tucker. And by 97, they they're doing their own thing. And what happens with this album is a few things. One, they get finally land a drummer. That's kind of more permanent. Punk bands are infamous for the merry-go-round of having different drummers. These ladies landed one of the best drummers in the industry, I would say, and that'd be Janet Wise. She is from an indie band called Quasi. And if you haven't heard that album, if you haven't heard the album Hot Shit, check it out. It's really good. So it's kind of this album kind of blended. They kind of start gelling a little bit more on this. It's a album about breakups and heartache. You're a fan of Fleetwood Mac, Paul. So dating a member of the band usually sometimes leads to pretty great works of art, even though it's probably awkward as fuck for the members of the band. Corin Tucker and Carrie Brownstein were a couple. and they broke up, and a lot of the lyrics for this album is about that and Corin Tucker's relationship with her future husband, Lance Bangs. He's a director. But before this album comes out, we're going to touch a little bit on what not to do in journalism.
Oh, okay.
Before this album comes out, Carrie Brownstein and Corin Tucker are interviewed by Spin. Spin writes an article about them being a couple before Carrie Brownstein had even come out to a lot of her family.
Oh, shit. Yeah, it's a big no-no. You don't out people.
No. And, and especially, and this is kind of like when you think about it, especially like 96, 97, the world is not as accepting to the LGBTQ community as they are now. And even now, it's super tough. So that kind of adds to the dynamic here. So they end up recording this album, and it really, sonically, I think it gels. They become a much better musical unit, and Janet Wise would stay with the band until about 2019. She leaves. Creative differences, but here we are.
I'm sorry. I'm going to take us down a little bit of a rabbit hole. Wasn't she also the drummer for Steve Malkmus?
I think so. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
She's really in tune with the indie rock world.
Okay. Yeah, I seem to remember that because I love that album, Real Emotional Trash by him. And I want to say she was the drummer on that album, but I could be completely off. But I know she did some drumming for him.
Yeah. I mean, and that's one of the things, this album, as going back and reviewing it for this, the drumming really stands out to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so.
It's almost like, because it's a very punky album. It feels like, oh, this drumming is too good at times for this, very raw, but it's very precision. And it works. It's just it's just kind of shocking at first, I think. Mm-hmm. And I also want to say, this was one of the albums. There's 3 albums when I was going through my divorce that got me through it, and this is one of them. And I think it's because I know it's because of the lyrical content in this. I think it's breakups suck.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't at least I didn't have to be in a band with my significant other like these ladies.
Yeah, there's something. I mean, that's something. You know what I mean? Yeah.
All right. So, Paul, let's get into it. Let's talk about this album. What works for you with Dig Me Out?
So there's a lot that works for me, but again, there's the thing that I don't like about any type of punk that also falls into the traps here, which is there are some I want to make it very clear, more than not, there are some great standout songs, but there are parts of this album where I've listened to it about 5 times, and when it gets these certain sections of it, I kind of drone out because I feel like I'm hearing the same thing. And that's me with any punk album. And I love punk, don't get me wrong, but I think that's part of why I think I love certain punk tracks, because they stand out more. And I go, that's going on a playlist. That's an awesome punk song. That's an awesome punk song. That's just my relationship with punk.
Well, yeah, I'm the same way. This album, there's songs where I'm just like, It's this is not like a timeless greatest album. It has a lot of strong material on it. It's just when it gets to it just sounds formulaic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just that's going to be issue with any music you listen to. I think punk especially falls into that, I think, easily, because it's 3 chords and attitude, which is that mentality, at least when it was formulated. So it's kind of hard to break out of it. And the ones that do break out, I love a lot. And the one that really stands out for me musically would be Heart Factory.
Mm-hmm. That's on my list of great songs on this album to me.
Yeah. that is like, it stands out. Like, just musically, it's so strong. And I was like, so I'm reading up on it. They're recording this album during a blizzard in Seattle, and like the studio is like ice cold and freezing. And if you listen closely, I guess like Janet Wise was using part of the radiator as her drum kit because it was broken.
So wow, really?
Yeah, she's adding that to where like flourishes, I guess.
That's interesting. I had no idea. I guess I didn't know anything about the making of this, anything like that. So that's interesting to me. And I it's funny how some of these, like, you hear these horror stories, like we talked about it with some of the other stuff in the studios, and when they're trying to make the music, and they come out with some great stuff.
Yeah. Another thing that I found out that this was recorded in 8 days.
No way.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah, well, you and I, like, we love our prog rock. Paul and I do. And those typically take such a long time to record.
Well, and okay, some people may hate this, but you hear about the stories of like fucking Coconut Pete writing songs on the Crapper about Margaritaville. I mean, come on. If you didn't get those references, there's a couple jokes in there, guys.
Yeah. So yeah, it's so. For me, okay, so the songs that stand out for me, Heart Factory.
Mm-hmm.
I really like One More Hour. That's a song that's explicitly about Carrie Brownstein, that they've actually admitted. Little Babies and Buy Her Candy are like my tracks.
Yeah, you have me. I have One More Hour, Turn It On, Heart Factory, Little Babies are right there on mine. I do like the title track, Dig Me Out. I think it's a great starter to an album. I do like Buy Her Candy. I think that's another stand. It's not quite punky, but to me, it's one of those tracks that stands out on this. And then it ends strong with Things You Say and, Jenny. Now, a 4-minute punk song is kind of pushing it, but it's got its moments.
Yeah. Well, this is where they kind of like, this is kind of like a weird hybrid. Like, so when you think of like Riot Girl, you really think of like punk. And I think like with Sleeter-Kinney, like especially with this album, they're starting to get into more a hybrid of punk and indie rock. So like the songs are getting a little longer, and they're like not as, they're a little more attention, I think, is being paid to the musicianship.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that especially with the albums after this, it's even more apparent. But yeah. But then there's songs that I just don't care. Let's talk about the stuff that doesn't really work for me. Dance Song 97.
No.
I could just throw that in the trash.
Yep. And I'll say like that blip there between Heart Factory and Little Babies. It goes Heart Factory, words of guitar, it's enough. That's the part that I've been zoning out on every time. I've listened to this thing 4 times. Those songs come on. I'm just like, oh boy.
Yeah. I like the lyrics to Words and Guitar. I think if they placed it somewhere else on the album, it might have stood out a little bit more.
Right. But the bleed, but kind of the transition from Words and Guitar into It's Enough is just not what you want. I'm sure there's a lot of angst in that one, knowing what the album's about, but it's just not one that stood out to me. Yeah. But again, as I said, the majority for me is better. What else didn't you like? Or are we kind of on the same page there?
I think I'm on the same page. Like I like Words and Guitar a little bit more than maybe you did, but I think it's just kind of like, I think it's just a sequencing thing. Like if it would have came on, like after one of the more punkier songs instead of being bled into by a really good song like Heart Factory, I think I might have liked it a little bit more. Yeah.
And I think you nailed something on this. I think there could have been some better spacing in here to really, because again, the standouts are better than what it was. I think if you had gone, like I think there are some of these that I think considered now would probably be, I think even they would admit they're kind of filler songs. I think if you had done standout filler, because there's enough here to do that. And these songs are not overly long. I mean, again, the longest one being the 4-minute punk song, which no one should do. Unless you're the Me First and the Gimme Gimmes.
Yeah. Well, the Clash got away with it.
They did, but were they really doing punk either? Like that's a debate among some punksters. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't give a shit. Like here's the thing. Let me go on a little rant here. There's nothing more obnoxious to me than like describing what punk is, because it's always like a sticking point. Like people have like their idea, like punk should not be more than 3 chords. Like
that's
when
bullshit.
I hear that, I just want to kick somebody in the dick.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. You know, they talk about, I want to get on that a little bit with you. Do you know some people consider like both, like we talked about with Lou Reed, but there are people who consider Lindsey Buckingham punk.
And that's fine. Like, the definition of punk to me, like, was more of an attitude.
Yeah, it's an attitude
and your approach.
Going against and the norms, right? Going against the norms.
Yeah, so if Lindsey Buckingham did an album, like I'm not too familiar with his solo work, so I can't speak to that. But if he did something that goes against the norms and it was like on his own or whatever, yeah, that is like, like for me, I always like said like Johnny Cash is one of the best punk artists there is because he just did his thing and he didn't give 2 fucks.
And that's it's less about like what his albums were, like you can't consider it punky. It was the playing style. People are like, this guy's punk because he's not playing by the norms. He's not doing things. I'm so glad you brought this up because I also do have some of an issue with that. Now, again, when I say, doing punk, I don't want to hear a 4-minute Sex Pistol song. I really don't. I don't.
Well,
I don't.
I don't even want to hear a Sex Pistol song in general. So.
Yeah. So that's my take on that, is that I don't want that, right? Wow. So I
listen to television because they have like 8 minutes long punk songs.
Oh God.
We'll do Marquee Moon at some point.
Okay. Well, we'll do that. And yeah, I have just this kind of idea that of what it, but yeah, it should be whatever you want it to be, right? Mm-hmm. And I think there are these people that really got into it. But then again, in our hometown, we had punks running around with Confederate flags. So I also didn't give a lot of credence to a lot of the punks we hung out with. Yeah,
no. They were mostly just all about the image, which always baffled me. Mm-hmm. I think that's with a lot of punk, though. People are catering to a style over the substance. So you see like, the 90s, late 90s had like such a bad division. It was like mall punks and like against real punks, and you had the gutter,
and don't forget the pop.
Did not give a fuck about any of that.
Don't forget the absolute hatred of anything pop punk.
Yeah, and my eyes just glaze over when people like, well, that's not this and that's not, like, I don't, like, I feel like Charlie from It's Always Sunny, like, I don't care.
Right.
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 If somebody in a mall wearing a Hurley hat who listens to Blink-182 wants to identify as punk, fuck, I don't care, man. Like, that's their thing. I may not agree with it, but I think it got, and also like it also got very corporatized. The thing is an unspoken thing with punk that when it got corporatized, they don't like talking about that. But if you look at the band's Warped Tour, where a giant shoe conglomerate sponsored a giant festival to sell advertising, like, you're not fucking Joe Strummer or John Lydon anymore.
No. I mean, and when you look at, again, another thing I'm really glad you brought up. It's the same thing to me, like when people went to the new Woodstock. It's like, that's fuck off. And even the original Woodstock, that was pretty commercialized. Come on.
Yeah, even that. Don't even talk. And if you ever read up into the actual Woodstock movie, they cut out all like the cultural politics at the time, which really just kind of washes over what that concert was about. Like, for a lot of like organizers, not the people who put it on, but like Abby Hoffman and Black Panthers and White Panthers and like all these counterculture groups. So
yeah, I think that's crazy that that's lost on history, that it was a counterculture event. And then you had the new one and it was just like, people were charging $10 for bottled water and you're going, fuck off. You've lost the plot, man.
Yeah. I'm kind of glad it burned to the ground.
kind of like Fire Festival.
To the music of Limp Bizkit.
That is the most Limp Bizkit thing to ever Limp Bizkit. They to me are like the Sean Bean character of music. Just everything they touch dies. But yeah, no, there's definitely some indie here. There's definitely some punk here. I'm glad you said this is second generation Riot Girl. Which is, there's something else I wanted to bring up and listen to this album that made me think about this. Was, if you remember in the last like couple months, I think of this recording, Phoebe Bridger had been on Saturday Night Live and got lambasted for smashing a guitar on stage, and there was this big this big reverberance of why, because it was a woman, how dare she smash that guitar. First of all, even she admitted it was an $80 Dan Electro. Get the fuck off. And she called them and said, can I do this? And they're like, fuck yeah, you can do this. So she even called the people to be polite about it. So fuck off there. This is something that I think is missed. Like, this is a genre that should have gotten more steam than it ever did.
Yeah, I agree. And especially when you listen to this and you're like we talked about, because we're like, the songs that we like are the ones that kind of branching out beyond the typical punk sound. They're like branching out into like more indie rock here, and it should have. I'm kind of surprised it wasn't embraced more by like the hipster crowd. It's weird to me that, like, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't get into this band until 10 years ago. I wasn't listening to you and I were not listening to Sleeter-Kinney in high school when this came out.
No. I didn't catch it till probably I was about 21, 22, like a couple of years after we graduated.
But I feel like this band and like this album should be like embraced just as much as like what I would equate like their indie, compatriots. Like when I think of like the Hold Steady or My Morning Jacket, like all these bands that were like just blowing up when this band was still around. It just weird. I'm just kind of surprised that like that never happened, and it was like not until Carrie Brownstein's on Portlandia that I think more people started paying more attention to this band,
which is like 30 years fucking later. Yeah, there was a big scene there, and I don't know what happened and why it didn't cultivate. Because I mean, one thing I want to say too about the voice, if I may, her voice is very much, it's like a female Dead Kennedys.
Yeah, just Jello Biafra.
Yeah, it does though. She has that. Like right when I heard this, I'm like, oh, there's definitely, like, she's a Dead Kennedys fan. Like, no question about it. She's a Dead Kennedys fan. My
favorite Dead Kennedys songs, too, are the ones that don't sound like they're another band that's just like all their songs sound the same until they get to Holiday in Cambodia. It's just like the pitfalls of the genre.
Yeah, there is that. And again, it's just part of that era, like kind of like what we talked about, like going back to, we talked about multiple times, like the band Death, and how they had no blueprint at the time. And then the blueprint got created. And obviously, like, the weird thing about punk was it should have gone off the trails from its own blueprint multiple times. And anytime anyone did, the fan base was, that's not punk.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I brought it up, like the Clash did that, starting with like London Calling.
Yep.
Joe Strummer had a great quote about that. I'm just going to paraphrase it. He's like, we were never your toy to begin with, as in like, we're not yours. We don't belong to the listeners, which is like a very liberating idea, especially for like a genre that it's hard to expand the sound on. A lot of bands just don't. They just don't.
No. No, they don't. They don't. I mean, Green Day got a lot of shit for the directions they went. For to the point now where no one even considers them a punk band anymore. I'm sorry,
Weird.
that's weird. They're a punk band. They will always be a punk band.
Yeah, it's a limiting genre, and like with this album, I think they're expanding out, and maybe that cost them some listeners.
Maybe because there are like the standout tracks to me, and I think to you aren't the like the blueprinted punk songs, right?
Yeah, the musicianship on the songs that you and I enjoy is fucking great. Like, One More Hour, you listen to the drums, I'm just like, holy shit. Then like the riffs, they have fucking riffs on this album that are just like, that's almost antithesis to what people expect from a punk album. I mean, there's, and especially in the late 90s, there's so many shitty punk bands. You and I probably saw more than our fair share at the local coffee shops in our hometown.
Dude, I saw so many. I was in one. I was in a shitty punk band, dude.
I was going to say, though, I did see one of my favorite punk bands. It was like my buddy brought me to it. I don't know if you were there or you saw it, but if you missed it, you missed out. It was a band called Amish Armada.
Oh, I've seen Amish Armada. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It was fucking phenomenal. They're dressed like Amish guys. Mm-hmm. They had like Misfits logo, but with like an Amish hat and a beard over. It was great. Like when that genre has a sense of humor, or if it's like branching out sonically, it's really cool. It's just, it gets so stagnant so easily.
It does. That I will totally admit it does. And that's just, again, the pitfall of it. And it just goes to show, again, you lost what punk is supposed to be. I mean, again, not many punk people would consider Lou Reed's Metal Machine music a punk album, yet it was the start of Punk magazine. It was the first thing they fucking highlighted because that is the most punk thing you could fucking do. I mean, could you imagine fucking Johnny Rotten walking into a fucking studio head with just noise and going, fuck it, you're going to do it? No, he's not going to do that. They're a fucking boy band.
Well, didn't he almost pretty much do that with Public Image Limited?
Well, fair.
And I don't even like John Lydon. That guy's a fucking dick, but here, like in this, kind of round back to this album, we see them kind of branching out beyond that. And those are like, I think the tracks, the albums that follow, it's just like they progress into like a stronger musical unit. And they kind of like, well, they'll still have the punk mentality. I think they become a lot better singer-songwriters. But this is kind of like the album where they start doing that, at least in my opinion. I'm sure Sleeter-Kinney fans might disagree, but
yeah, and maybe, and I'm sure there was, and I'm also sure there's fans that went, this is where they stopped caring so much as well. You're always going to have that in albums like this where they start kind of going in different directions, right? And you and I fall into the same trappings, right? Like we talked about our Pink Floyd baggage. I'm sure people have some baggage on any album where a band started to kind of move in a direction that they weren't used to.
Oh yeah, one of the best examples from the mid 2000s I remember is when Modest Mouse released Good Music.
Mm-hmm.
Good music, people love bad, and I just remember like old Modest Mouse fans were just pissed because I got radio play, and I'm just like, this album's really good though.
It's really good.
They're progressing as a band. They're sounding a lot better, and it's just like, nope. And it's just like, that's the gatekeepers of fucking scenes are just talking to them is probably the worst experiences of my life. It's never happy.
What's really interesting with Modest Mouse is I actually saw them live once, and that's a band that's like the complete opposite. I prefer their studio than their live stuff because I think they do a lot more stuff and gimmicking and playing around in the studio than they can do live, and I noticed that right away.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I saw them live once, and they did like an 18-minute version of Cowboy Dan, and that was pretty
That's amazing. Awesome. I didn't see that.
Yeah. I was there with our mutual friend Kwong, and he just looked at me and he said, "You just went to Jupiter and back." And I was just like, "What the fuck did you just say to me?"
I love him. He's got the best expressions. You know, well, yeah, that mutual friend was in four of my bands. Yeah, yeah, our mutual friend Kwong was in four of my bands. You know, yeah, I think actually he surpasses Scott. And because I think I was in 3 bands with Scott, 4 bands with Kwong, and I was in 5 bands total.
Yeah. Kwong turned me on to, he's the one who got me into like Modest Mouse. And like, he's actually like, the guy who kind of got me into like more indie rock, which led me to like bands like Sleeter-Kinney. Like, you know, I doubt he ever played them, but, you know, like when I, you know, my early to mid 20s, I'm discovering like, you know, the hold steady, lifter puller, that sort of thing. That's, you know, he kind of put me in that direction, and that kind of like what got this band on my radar.
He actually brought in Built to Spill was one of our we do one of their songs every show. And he introduced me to like Built to Spill. I knew of Modest Mouse and listened to Modest Mouse, you know, early on, even because again, when I was hanging out with these Riot Girls, they were listening to Modest Mouse because they liked that, and they were also listening to Connor Oberburst. And
yeah, I think the Riot Girl scene was, especially like the women in that scene, had much more diverse taste in music than us dudes.
Yeah, yeah. Living like basic, like I said, I lived on their couch, and I learned more about music in that short amount of time, like that 2.5 years I lived on their couch.
You're Steven Wright.
I was Steven Wright. Like I even had a key, I think, at one point where I just let myself in and just go on the couch. And yeah, I was that guy, and eventually they just got sick of it. So, you know, good for them. And, but yeah, no, they were into all that stuff, but it wasn't until Kwong that I actually started playing Modest Mouse, and we did covers of Modest Mouse, and really getting into like, whoa, this, you know, for how, you know, just basic and whatever sound this is, there's some real technique here. Like this is some really, really high technique music, and it, you know, and it doesn't come off like that because they play it so seamlessly.
And you know, kind of wrap it back to this album. Like when I listen to a lot of the music, you know, the musicality on the songs we like on this album, it's kind of like the same way. Like if I were to start a band, I would probably throw one of these songs onto a cover list. I would probably do like maybe One More Hour or Heart Factory. It'd be weird if I sang Little Babies.
I don't know. I think if we get to 200, you and I will do a cover of Little Babies. You can sing it.
I will say though, like, so when I was going through my divorce, I listened to so I started listening to this album because, you know, it's a lot of heartbreak and like, you know, anger. You know, it sucks. I remember listening to Little Babies and realizing like, holy shit, I've been that asshole in my life. So this was like one of those tracks where I'm just kind of like, it was a learning experience and very embarrassing. And I'm brave, I'll just admit it. Yeah, I've been that dickhole, and it's just like listening to that song and listening to the lyrics like helped me become a better person, I say.
Well, you know, I mean, there's a lot of songs like that. Like I can kind of attribute to them. Like, wow, this really gave me perspective, and I think that's what good music is, right? It's whatever connects with you and gets you kind of through, because there is a lot of prolific, even in punk, even in any genre, even in disco. There's some prolifics there where you go, wow, that's actually something I should really keep in mind. I've done that with lyrics my entire life.
Yeah. Lyrics are, I like when I really appreciate dark lyrics when they sneak it into like a very poppy song. It's one of the reasons I really love They May Be Giants.
Right. Absolutely. So, but yeah, we've gone off the beaten path here with them. But back to Sleeter-Kinney. Yeah, this was, you know, I do think that this album was kind of that transition and move. And I think also around this time that it came out, there was a shift in what was considered, quote, female music, right? Like, I think around this time you started getting a lot of that, the Tori Amos piano style music that was becoming very popular.
Yeah. I like some Tori Amos, but yeah, around late 90s, like, it didn't do it for me. The Tori Amoses, the Annie DeFranco's. Like,
Yeah.
it's just not like my preferred style, I guess. But I appreciate what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
If I had known about Sleeter-Kinney that time, I'd probably be listening to that and be like, yeah, let's listen to this instead, you know?
Right. And yeah, I mean, and again, when I was living in their house, I didn't have the guy on the couch. I didn't have say over what they're playing, right? Overall, though, Joe, I mean, I personally would recommend this album. That's me. I would.
Yeah. I love this album. Like we said, there's that's the filler stuff that kind of just the eyes glaze over a bit. But I mean, and it's also very much an album of its time. We discussed that with the Genesis album. This has a very like late '90s sound to it. But I love this album. I mean, just for the tracks that you and I discussed alone, I love the song. "Dig Me Out," such a great intro. It's also like a good song about getting yourself out of like a shitty place where you're at in life. But yeah, I would highly recommend it. I think it's one of those albums that if you want to expand your musical horizons, give it a shot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, get out of the comfort zone. It's one of the reasons I wanted to suggest this album, because we were really in dude territory.
We were in dude territory, and you brought that up, that hey, we're in dude territory here, and we need to. And I was like, you know what, you're right. We are in dude territory. So I have my next two recommendations are going to be female-led albums.
Which is funny because like I am such a sucker for women bands. Like I think it's just like the vocals and whatever. I just lean heavy into that. So I'm surprised I didn't pick one before. But I had to get the Gilmer in there to get us both. Gilmer, you're ruining Floyd, Gilmer.
Gilmer. Stop running the shit, Gilmer.
But yeah, I think we both would recommend this album. Again, there's some dead weight, but I think that's just about any album.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think. Everybody talks about the perfect album. It's almost non-existent in my opinion, because every album I've listened to has a dud of some sort on it. So
yeah, I completely agree. I completely agree. And that's just what it is. I mean, when you get the albums, but overall, like I said, the fact that I took on a 13-track album, I picked out all but, and for me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 tracks that I wasn't really, was like, okay, but they're not bad. They're not like awful songs. It's just that in comparison to those standout tracks, they're hell, even some of the best. I mean, Michael Jackson's Thriller had filler songs on it, people. So get over it.
That song with Paul McCartney. God. It's the only reason I will never listen to Thriller. That album's that song with Paul McCartney is just say or whatever. I just nope.
Yeah. Really? Okay?
That one song. Sometimes it just takes one song, man. For me to just be like, nope, I'm done with this.
For me, that one song is every Bee Gees album.
Oh, God. Well, we're going to be doing a Bee Gees album.
Are you sure that was on Thriller? I don't think that was on Thriller. Yeah, it was The Girl Is Mine. That's right.
Yeah.
Not Girl, Go Girl. The Girl Is Mine. Yeah, you're right. It's sad that I know like the entire Thriller album. But my buddy had it on vinyl, and we'd go down into his basement. It was like the only vinyl that they had. So we had to listen to it over and over and over. That, and they had the Moonwalker movie with Joe Pesci, but that's another story.
Oh, Joe, we did that for a Joe down.
Fuck. Christ.
Yeah, I'm starting to realize we've done a lot of movies. But yeah, we'd both recommend this album. It's, I think it's a transitional album for the band, and it's got such.
Yeah, I don't think there's much else we can really say. I like it.
Yeah, we went on tangents.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we went on tangents. Yeah. It's fine.
Yeah. Other than that, Joe, I can't think of anything else. Oh yeah. What am I picking next week, Joe? What am I picking next week?
I don't know. You haven't told me.
Oh, I haven't told you. Oh boy.
That's
We're
a
doing.
chucklehead question right there, Paul.
Well, I'm going to give you a Chucklehead album, you dick. We're gonna do. We're gonna do Amanda Lear's "Sweet Revenge."
Amanda Lear?
Mm-hmm. Amanda Lear, Sweet Revenge. It's a 1978 disco album by the French singer Amanda Lear.
Oh, what the fuck?
What the fuck am I doing to you, Joe?
What's the album called again?
It's called Sweet Revenge.
Sweet Revenge. She has an album called I Don't Like Disco, and it has a deluxe edition.
She sure does. This woman, to give you guys just give you some foreground into her, and how I found out about her, was that she was had dated David Bowie. She was Salvador Dali's muse and sexual play toy, and she was in a ridiculous movie called Crazy Nights. Crazy Nights was an Italian exploitation film by Joe D'Amato. And I'll get into the bad shit that happened with that movie. But yeah, you've never heard of Amanda Lear, and now you have.
This album's not even on Spotify.
Shit.
Paul, we have rules.
It is on YouTube. We went that far, Joe.
Well, lucky for me, I actually enjoy disco music, so joke's on you, Paul. I like the Bee Gees.
Well, then you're gonna love this album, I think.
Oh, thank God. You like ABBA? Because I like ABBA too.
I think this out ABBA's the ABBA.
Makes me feel so good.
Yep. And again, I'm so interested in getting into like the story behind what was supposed to be the promotion for like. There's a lot of shit. Like this is when we're going to dig into some really interesting stuff with this one. But yes, the little known, the unknown Amanda Lear.
This is wild.
You're welcome.
I'm so obscure I have to listen to it on YouTube.
You're welcome.
Oh, all right, bud. I'm excited. Hey, yes. I think it's, if people haven't noticed, I get excited when I have new music to listen to. Like I get a rush, even if it sucks or if it's whatever. I just like finding something new. So if there's like even one nugget on this album, like it'll totally be worth it to me.
Well, you enjoy that run. Have fun on your journey, Joe. No, I'm sure you will. I'm sure, knowing you and your eclectic taste, you will find something. And it's not the worst album. I don't think we've even come anywhere near the worst album of all time. Minus
the Kiss one came pretty close.
Momentary Lapse of Reason was worse than the Kiss one, dude.
Goddamn Gilmer,
you son of a bitch! You're ruining my flow, Gilmer. All right, bud. Well, why don't you take us out, Joe?
We're out, Joe.